give an example of something that you've written down on your list? Anybody? Okay, yeah, one from the front here then.
I teach marketing and marketing communications. In one of my classes where I teach copywriting for advertising, one of the learning outcomes is for students to identify the types of advertising, whether it's consumer to consumer, business to business, intermediary advertising, direct action, or image creating advertising. So this is one of the learning outcomes, identifying and recognizing. They need to identify, again, what type of a target group is intended. They need to perform and design ads, so they need to write headlines and develop appropriate body copy.
Okay, so let's look at this table then. So where are they learning this? Just one of the environments where they learn it.
It's actually the lecture theatre.
In the lecture
where they're
theatre.
learning this.
Okay, so what are you doing in the lecture theatre?
What I do is first I have to instruct them on what types of advertising exist. I have to help them distinguish between different types of advertising.
So you're talking.
I'm talking, but also
what are they
giving
doing?
them examples.
Okay.
I put examples on the board, on the screen. After having given them the basic principle, I need them to identify whether that is
Okay,
this or
so
that.
you're in the lecture theatre, so you're talking, and then what are the students doing?
When I ask them, they respond.
So so you're asking questions.
I'm asking questions after I've given them the basic principle.
Okay.
And then they tell me, what the
Okay.
answer is.
Okay.
And then gradually we move on to developing advertising from scratch.
Okay, that's great. So in that situation, you're providing information, and then so it's very much similar to the one we've got here. They're listening, and then you're asking questions, and they're answering.
And then they have to do group projects.
Right. Okay. So I'm
Each
just going to break it all down
preparation.
into the micro sort of activities. Okay. So, but for that example, you're doing quite a lot of the work
At the beginning.
at the beginning. Okay, that's great.
Yes, my learning environment is in studio actually, and doing design.
Yes.
And after explaining the design problem, I'm creating a kind of discussing environment through the examples of the problems. And then I allow them to create questions. Depends on their experiences, their previous knowledge, and then this remind them to their using the buildings, using the environment, whatever it is. Then students first of all listening me, and then discussing with me and with the other students. Again, sometimes through the examples, sometimes through their experiences. And then asking questions or create the questions. The questions not necessarily to be answered at that sessions.
Right.
The questions has to be investigated by the students.
Okay. So they're looking for the key basically.
And then they generate their individual idea options. The next sessions, one by one sessions, we try to select one of the best ideas, which is individual. And then we try to develop this unique idea. This is actually based on problem solving teaching.
Okay, that's great. So we're going from they're listening, they're formulating their own questions, and then they're exploring that question as they go.
The most important thing is here to create options. To create several solutions, and then focus on one of them. And then being focused on one of them is also important to discuss every kind of parameters why they choose that idea.
Okay, that's great, thank you. An idea from over at the back there? Anybody?
I use once website for my course, which is like an extended version of my class. So, for example, when I'm talking about the production of a Boeing airplane, I added a documentary or some text or extra material to the blog where the students can do extended learning about it. So the environment is a virtual environment, and what I'm doing is preparing the appropriate links and documents there, and the students are just following up things which I post there.
Okay, that's great. Okay, what I'd like you to do, some of you have just sort of focused on one part of the activity, but what I'd like you to do, certainly for this evening, just spend another couple of minutes just making sure that you've done at least one all the way through. But thinking about that environment, very specifically about what you're doing, and you can sort of think of the balance, you know, are you doing much more than they are? In which case you need to kind of flip that round a bit. You know, they're the ones that are doing the learning, so they should be the ones that are doing the majority of the work. Think about what your students are doing, and if you start to add in lots of different learning environments, are your students doing the same thing all the time, or are you giving them the opportunities to learn in lots of different ways? Okay, or is it 90% of the time they're listening, and then a couple of percent of the time they're asking questions, writing, etc., etc. Okay, so you think about the balance of these, and then actually think about what learning outcome that is actually aligning to. Okay. Now, I did post last week or the week before about bringing along a module description. Did everybody do that? Does everybody have access to that, or have access to that? Okay, right. Well, we'll have to rethink that. But so if you can just spend another few minutes just making sure that you've mapped this all the way across, thinking about those examples that we had around the room. What are you doing? What your students are doing? And what learning outcome that's actually aligned to? And then think about all the different learning environments that you use. Okay, so I know just in that time you just focused on perhaps one or two, but think about all the different places that the students learn. Okay, so make sure this list is complete and complete one row for at least two of those. Okay, and then complete that. So I'll just give you 3 or 4 minutes to just complete that table. Left-hand column. Okay, so just to finish off this activity, I would really like you to try to deep delve into that this evening, so you end up with a whole table of this. Okay, and I think that will help you. Certainly when you're writing your fellowship application, exploring the bits of your practice where what you're doing in the classroom is actually developing your learning outcomes. Okay? And I just coming back to this idea of the amount of time that we spend doing different things, and I think you could draw that table and you could probably identify in there lots of different things that the students are doing, but what proportion of their time are they actually actively constructing their learning? So you can sort of think of it, I mean, we don't have to be very accurate about this, but you can sort of think about it broadly in terms of the hours that the students spend doing different activities. And we can do this as a kind of as a wheel, okay? So when you think about the times, each of these segments should represent a period of time. So I've done this as a fairly even circle. So here, well, how many have we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. An eighth of the time, according to the size of that segment, students are sitting in lectures listening. Okay, but that, for you, that might be a third of the time. It might be half the time that their learning is based on sitting listening. Yeah. So you draw this circle and divide it up into segments which represent roughly the amount of hours students are doing those different activities. Okay? Does that make sense? Yeah? So each of these segments represents the amount of time they spent in lectures listening, the amount of time they spent doing independent work, preparing for class, what have you. Okay? Perhaps working in groups, discussion groups. You can list all these things around here. The next part of that thing is then, so here we've got practical experiments. Thinking thinking on a scale of 1, where 1's in the middle and it's very low, and 10 on the outside, when they're in that activity, how far are they actively constructing their own understanding? Okay? So just give you an example of a practical laboratory. A first year laboratory, I might give a student a list of instructions. You know, you put so many mils of this into this test tube, you heat it up, you add this, and it's like a recipe. And the students are following through that recipe. And at the end they'll get some data, and then they'll perhaps develop some understanding. But for that kind of very prescribed practical experiment, the constructing their own understanding is probably quite low. Yeah? If I said to them, you know, in their second year or their third year or their final year, I want you to design an experiment that's going to allow me to measure this or X, Y, Z, whatever. Okay? Then they've got to think about the experiment, they've got to think about the equipment, and they're constructing their own understanding is going to be much higher. Yeah? Does that make sense? So again, if you think from another discipline, you know, if I ask students to compare two accounts of an incident in history and just compare and contrast those, they're going to be actively constructing their understanding of that scenario much more than if I just say, well, here's one opinion and here's another opinion. Okay? They're reading different first-hand accounts and then developing their own understanding. Okay, so then they're actively constructing what's up here. Okay? Similarly, if I'm giving a lecture and then asking you to come up with questions, you're starting to increase the amount of constructing your own understanding. Okay? So for each activity that you're doing or students are doing, the size of this segment represents the amount of hours they spend there, and you can just scale that in terms of how far do you think they're constructing their own knowledge in that activity. So if you just draw that circle now, develop your own pie chart for that. Okay? Everybody know what they're doing? So just draw that circle, divide it up into what your students are doing. Okay, so now just focusing on what your students are doing in terms of learning a topic or a module. Okay, so your circle should now be a pie chart representing all the different things that students are doing. And then you can put a line across here, somewhere between 1 and 10, in terms of how far they're actively constructing their own learning on that. So that's really it's just for you to, as a tool, to start thinking about to what extent are you telling students how to do stuff, and to what extent are they actively learning by themselves. And what you end up with, I mean, you can complete this in your own time, is kind of a detailed plot of what students are doing all of the time. So you can draw these lines across, okay? So we've got problem-based learning here, which is a technique we'll be using over the next couple of days, where it's quite, students are very much constructing their own knowledge. Case studies, similarly, we're developing the understanding there. And what you end up being able to do is get a picture of how much time students are actively constructing their own knowledge, okay? So you can fill these in. And the extent to which this circle is filled in colour is the extent to which you're developing a constructive learning environment. Okay? So it's really just for your own purpose to kind of audit and think about your teaching activities, and breaking it down into this amount of hours that students are spending in individual activities can help you, you know, because I think we can be, I think we can be a little bit deluded about the extent to which our students are constructing their own knowledge, and to which extent, you know, when you think about the amount of time they spend in different tasks, okay? And again, thinking back to Module 1, we know that students have different learning styles, so if everything is delivered via lectures, or 75–80% of it is by lectures, and students taking notes, that's very, you know, just one teaching and learning approach. So you might have these others in there, but thinking about the extent to which you use those others is really important. Okay, so it's quite useful task just to kind of help you visualise the extent to which students are constructing their own understanding. Okay, there's a couple of reflective questions that I want to. I'll put these onto the virtual learning environment, but you might just want to make a note of them now, take some photographs of them, just can prompt you when you're writing your reflective account of practice. So the first one is, how does constructive alignment promote better learning and teaching? So why do we need to do constructive alignment? Anybody got any thoughts on that now? Why is this important?
Because we can never be sure that what we intend to teach reaches the audience.
Yeah.
So we have to know and measure.
Yes, so you need the assessment bit
The
to measure.
efficiency.
Yes, yeah. And the learning environment piece?